Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to Drummers Eating Pizza. This is episode 5. Super excited to get this episode out. This episode is the great Shawn Pelton from the Saturday Night Live band and New York City session drummer, and Tony Leone from the band Little Feat. It's going to be a 2-part episode because we did about 2 hours down at Shawn's Manhattan studio. And just fair warning, we had a few technical difficulties since I was using a new mobile rig. So Tony's microphone was not working great, and one of the cameras wasn't working, so if you see some parts of the video that have a weird angle, I apologize. But please like, share, subscribe. Going to be 2 parts to episode number 5. Here's part 1. Part 2 will be out soon. Thanks for watching.
So here's what we've got. It's 2 boots on the left, Ruby Rosa in the middle. Is that right, Ruby Rosa?
I think that's it, yeah.
Yeah, and then Motorino on the right, but all pepperoni, 3 different styles. This 2 boots thing, I've always loved it because it's the cornmeal crust thing.
I love that too.
And 2 boots is supposed to be like the marriage of Italy with
New Orleans.
Yeah, and Louisiana, like the states look like boots. Yeah,
Yeah.
All right, well, cheers to this one.
yeah.
I always did like 2 boots.
Yeah, I love it. With that cornmeal thing, the texture
Gives
of
a
it.
little crunch on the bottom.
Yeah.
So we just kind of rolled into this, folks. Drummers Eating Pizza, episode 5. Shawn Pelton, Tony Leone. You know who they are. Don't pretend you don't know. So what was the first one again?
2 boots.
2 boots.
2 boots, yeah. So
All pepperoni.
Italy mixes with Louisiana. And the cornmeal thing on the crust.
See, you guys have the New York, you fold everything, right? I noticed that right
I didn't
away.
even think about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess that's...
Now, is that because you guys are on the run, eating, you got to eat a slice quick? Is it easier to do it that? I mean, I know you get the flop and everything, but what's the idea of folding it?
Well, I like it's kind of on the run, but then also like with a plate that has this full. Sometimes I fold so that there's
Make more room.
and stuff. But it keeps things from falling off sometimes too.
Yeah, that's why I like it too. It's you're not going to lose anything if it's all folded up.
All right, so here's first question. You being from the South,
Yeah.
what was pizza like as a kid when you guys got pizza? Was it anything like this?
Man, it was so far from this that all we had was chains. So like Pizza Hut was around, and that was it. So it was like the one pizza place in town was Pizza Hut.
So
It
they
was a
didn't have
chain.
any independent family-owned pizza places, really?
Man, there was one in Arkansas that was trippy, and I remember my grandmother would always get green olives, which was kind of unusual for the time that was even an option. But I remember loving that because it was so salty and such a personality to the green olive thing. So it was good. But the crust, like these crusts are interesting. Like this place is supposed to be like the Italian thing with the coal oven, and,
Right.
and it felt like, man, the people in the Midwest, unless you were in Chicago or something like that, but you were never exposed to like the real pizza, The chain thing is different than this vibe, the coal oven thing was never around the Midwest.
Now, you're from, where in Connecticut are you from?
I grew up in the Hartford area, Newington, to be specific.
So you're probably you're eating the same pizza I'm thinking of, like the New England style, usually a little bit thicker crust.
Yeah.
Little
I
airier.
don't think I really had New York pizza until I came to New York.
Yeah.
I mean, the style of pizza in Connecticut, most of the pizza places are owned by Greek families, kind
Okay.
of like diners.
Yep.
So
Yep. The hard crust.
Yeah, hard crust
Right to
on
the edge,
outside
yep.
and like pretty thick, and often cut in squares.
Yep.
You know.
I worked at a Greek pizza place, and I asked people that came in why, because some people are like, I only eat Greek pizza, and they liked it because they don't like the crust. So a lot of the Greek pizza, there's just a very minimal crust. So they think they get more pizza for their money by having very minimal crust, and they like the crunch better than the doughy, which I like the dough. I like it.
Yeah.
Little bit of crisp to it, but I like the air bubbles in it.
Yeah, I never had a thin crust pizza that I remember until coming to New York. But we were definitely not pizza snobs in our family. Like, we were pizza lovers.
Whatever showed
Yeah.
up. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
In fact, my dad always has a saying too. He always says there's only two kinds of pizza, good and better.
Yeah. right.
I love that. Well, I'm going to number 2.
Yeah.
I'm gonna
Check it
beat
out.
ahead.
Oh, so that's you can hear it.
Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah.
And this is from who?
Ruby Rosa.
Yeah.
Ruby Rosa. This looks fancy.
Wow.
Yeah, man.
I like the sauce.
Yeah. Me too.
I like that too. Is there garlic on that one too?
There is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It has garlic. And
That's
some,
happening.
I think some Calabrian peppers and stuff.
Oh, man. Ruby Rosa, 2 thumbs up.
Yeah, I agree. So this has a thinner crust.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you can see it on the camera, but it's
really thin.
It's real thin.
I've been experimenting a little bit making pizzas at home. And it's hard to get the crust super thin. I think, and I've been figuring out that part of it is that you got to let your dough sit out. Like you can't just buy your dough and bring it home and start rolling.
Room temperature.
You gotta let it sit out and let it rise,
Yep.
and then use a lot of flour, I think, too.
Now, when you make it at home, can you get it thin? Because I try and make it thin. I think it has something to do with the dough itself.
I think it's the dough, and I think it's also the oven.
Yeah.
I don't have a great oven at home, so
Now, do you have a pizza stone? Do you use the pizza
we
stone?
do, but we never use it.
See,
I
that's
always
what-
end up using a cookie sheet.
Yeah, see, I was starting with the cookie sheet, and then I went to the pizza stone from, I don't know, Kim did some sort of hosting some party, and we got a bunch of free shit. So we got like a pizza stone. But we let that heat up for probably like a half an hour, and then you put the dough on it,
Wow.
and it crisps it up. It's pretty good, but I
Yeah.
can't get it thin like this. So I'm wondering, I'm going to have to find somebody that makes super thin and find out if it's the dough. Because I've talked to people in different parts of the country, like Utah. I know somebody out in Utah, and they said you can't get pizza like you can out here.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's some of it has to do with the elevation. They said
Right.
the higher up you are, the dough doesn't rise as much, I guess.
Yeah.
And then in Florida, because the way the water's filtered, it's got, I don't know if it's got a higher salt content in it, and it's the same thing. The pizza isn't quite the same as what it is up here. So I wonder in Italy, between, I don't know what the elevation is and the water and what they're using for ingredients, I wonder if it's unique to different regions because of that.
Yeah. That's a
Type of
good
stuff.
question.
Well, speaking of Italy, like this third one, this crust here is they imported the oven. I think these ovens like that came from Italy. Maybe.
Okay.
This is Motorino.
Motorino.
Yeah.
And where is this one located?
In the East Village, I think over there. Like a,
Oh man, I like this.
and this pepperoni is a little bit different too.
I was just going to
So
say that. That's
passata.
spicy.
Yeah.
That's so prasada.
Yeah. I think they didn't have official pepperoni, but they had this.
I like that.
That's
It's
got a
spicy.
kick. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the pepperoni. That's not the sauce. That's the pepperoni kick.
I think so.
Yeah, that's
Whoa.
good.
To quote our hero Bernard Purdy, I like it so much.
Oh man, I love him. Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic.
But the whole pizza oven thing, that some people have been importing them from over in Italy, you know, like some of the restaurants, so they have them, you know. It seems to make a difference, the way those are set up. What's those things you can buy now where you can actually put wood chips in it and put it in your backyard? And
So
like
the big one seems to be Uni,
right.
and then Solo Stove makes one. We've got one at home it's probably 4 feet tall. It's got a pizza stone in it, and you can use it with charcoal. You can use wood chips, and you can use it as a smoker as well.
Wow.
But I haven't tried to use it as a smoker.
Is that an air fryer?
No, it's an actual pizza oven.
Oh,
like
a
it's
pizza
outside,
oven.
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. It's got a little chimney on it,
Yeah.
so you can regulate the heat by opening or closing the flue.
And it works good, right? I've
It's good. It's good. I'd like to get one with a gas option to try both, because you can get Uni makes both.
Ah, wow.
You can do either wood or gas, depending on what you want to do.
Well, in New York, you can't get away with using like the wood thing, I guess. You know, like even like the wood, like if you're on your deck and you try to do that.
Oh, right.
Or
yeah,
something
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
Because everybody's in such close proximity, like they don't
Yeah.
let you do that shit, you know.
Yeah.
I wonder if you could get away with the gas one though, or how that would work.
Somebody'd be offended by your delicious smell.
Right.
They'd be picking it out front. No more pizza.
Yeah.
Well, that jazz place, Smoke, right?
Yeah.
Oh no, but the other one with the barbecue place,
Oh,
Jazz
Blue
Standard.
Smoke, the Jazz Standard, yeah.
Jazz Standard. Is that still around, or did it go?
I think they closed maybe during the pandemic.
But that was a trippy place because the barbecue place, and there were all those restrictions about, you know, how to deal with barbecuing meat, like in the middle of Manhattan, you know, with everybody so much around, and we're dealing with the smoke, you know.
I was not aware of that. So they had some issues with that?
Yeah, it was heavy trying to, I think all the restrictions, you know, dealing with it.
I really dug the barbecue there. I thought it was actually pretty good.
Yeah.
Not bad.
So the last pizza-based question, clearly for you, New York is the shit.
Yeah, I love
Because you grew up with just chain
Yeah.
Pizza Hut.
Yeah.
Now what about, I mean, you know, your dad said, you know, it's either good or better.
I mean,
But living in Brooklyn, do you have a spot where you're like, okay, this is my go-to?
there are many spots
Many.
all through the city. In fact, one of my favorite spots, which I'm sure Shawn knows too, everybody in New York knows, is Joe's Pizza, which is on Carmine Street in the West Village. And sometimes, if I'm on the train and I'm on my way back out to Brooklyn, I'll just get
Hop off real
at
quick.
West Fork just to get a quick slice, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, New York's the capital.
See, I need to make a list, and I need to come down for a weekend and just like hire a driver and just go around, and then you can drive me back to the hotel, and I can just pass out and then do round 2 the next day.
It's
Yeah.
very hard to do that. It's not like doing a bar crawl. I tried to do a pizza crawl with my dad and brother one time, but we didn't make it very. I think we made it to Lombardi's, and that was it.
Now, what is the wait like at some of the pizza places in New York? Like, are there certain places? Because I know one. There's the guy that does Barstool Sports. He does the pizza review thing. That's his big, you know, one bite. He goes to all these places all over the country. And there's one place he went to in New York, and they only do like 50 pizzas a day. They make a certain amount of dough, and that's it. And by like 10 a.m., they're sold out.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Was that DeFaro's out in Brooklyn?
It might have been. I know he went there,
Yeah.
and I don't think he got a pizza. They're like, we're out. We're sorry. We'd love to give you a pizza, but we are
Yeah.
sold out.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I never made it to that place. Maybe, I don't know if you know about it, it's out in Bensonhurst, I think, and there was apparently this guy the guy that owned it, that used to make every pie by hand, and he used to take basil and snip it with scissors, and, you know, you could wait like an hour for a pie. But he passed away, I think, last year, the year before. So I still haven't been out there, but that might have been the place you're talking about. Where
Yep.
You have to wait for an hour. But as far as waiting goes, I don't know.
Like, what's some of the
There's
big
always-
places in New York?
Well,
like that everybody
Place
knows.
at Joe's.
Joe's.
There's
So
always
Joe's.
a line
and there's
there.
a line there, yeah.
But it's like, what, 15, 20 minutes?
Moves pretty quick.
Yeah, so all right. So
You're
it's
just
not
getting a
too
slice,
bad.
yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Ellen B. Spumoni Gardens. They're all the good places are going to have. Well, wait, Grimaldi's in Brooklyn. That's usually hard to get into. That's a hard place to get into. That there'll be a line there, like on a sunny Sunday or Saturday afternoon. You're gonna have trouble getting in that place.
Yeah.
Did you ever go to? Oh, is it Arturo's? The
I
coal
love
oven place?
that
Yeah.
place, man.
Like
Arturo's.
kind of near the bitter end, right?
Yep.
Down there.
Yeah, on Houston Street.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's a line there, sort of. I
Mhm.
remember being, but that's got the coal oven wood, you know.
That place is slamming, and their pastas are good there too.
Yeah. Yeah, man.
Drummers eating pizza, man. I love it.
So that's part one, is the pizza section. Now we're gonna get into the music drumming section.
Yeah.
So I'll start with you, Shawn. What is your first musical memory? Doesn't have to be drums, just anything musical that stuck out.
One of the biggest ones is seeing Duke Ellington before he passed away. So I was like in the mid '70s, and I was living in this small town, Warrensburg, Missouri. But there was a state university there,
Yeah.
Central Missouri State University, and so they would have jazz bands come through, and man, Duke came through, and I was really young. I must have been 12 or something, or younger. I can't remember exactly, but it just was incredible because I remember everybody was moving during this concert, man. And it wasn't the loosest crowd. It was sort of an uptight Midwest crowd, And man, he had everybody in the palm of his hand, rhythmically. And the other thing was the orchestration choices that he was using, it would be clarinet with tenor with trombone, like the voicings of how he used the orchestra and stuff, and the way he set it up, and
Master.
yeah, it was incredible, So I was even though it was a small town, it was kind of lucky because there was a college there, so they would like Stan Kenton came through, and then this thing with Duke Ellington, and they would have different like I remember Ed Shaughnessy came through once, and I got to ride back to the airport with him and talk and stuff, and so I felt lucky that even though it was a small town, at least it was had like a university in it, and there was an arts thing coming through, Yeah. But that Duke Ellington thing, that blew me away,
I mean,
as a kid.
you're one of the few at this point, that probably got to hear Duke Ellington in person. That's incredible. Man.
Yeah, very lucky, man. In fact, the trombone cat that plays in Liebman's band sometimes, I was spacing his name, was on Ellington's band at that time. Cat has a beard, older cat.
Well, Art Barron.
Yeah, that's him. Art.
Wow, yeah.
He was in the band.
I
at
knew
that
that
time.
he played with Duke. Yeah.
Yeah, because we talked about that period,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fantastic, man.
I mean,
Do you remember who the drummer was at that point?
man, I don't. I do not. I should know
wonder
that.
who. I'm not sure who was with him later, but in the early '70s, I think it was like Rufus Speedy Jones or one of those.
Yeah,
dudes,
right.
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 Wow.
Now, what about you, Tony? First thing that pops into your head.
Well, I do remember being little and my dad pulling his drums out of the crawl space, when we had just gotten into this house.
So your dad played.
He played
Oh
drums.
my God, I
yeah.
love that. Yeah.
He'll still mess around. He has some friends he gets together with and plays. But yeah, I remember him pulling the drums out, and setting them up, and playing along with records, and all the kids in the neighborhood staring in the window while he was
Wow,
rocking
cool.
out, playing with some Motown or something.
Nice.
But yeah, in high school, I think he started playing in bands when he was about 13. and they started working. You know, bands were working in the early '60s. You know, if you had a band that could play a bunch of the tunes from the radio, you know, and could also play like a polka or like a cha-cha, you know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And they all wore the same suits. They'd be working. He said they'd work Thursday, Friday, Saturday every week, you know, while he was in high school. So, yeah, I'd say maybe one of my earliest musical memories would be watching him play.
And what did he have for a kit? And does he still have it?
No, I have it. In fact, I've been
amazing.
I've been playing it with Olabelle. I just had it last week. We were out for a few shows.
What is it?
61 Black Diamond Pearl Slingerland.
Wow.
20-inch bass drum, 13 and a 16. And I'm pretty sure the kick and the rack tom are mahogany. You know, back when they were still making mahogany drums.
Yeah.
Later on, they switched to maple. So he originally got the bass drum and the rack tom, and then Christmas after he got the floor tom. You know.
Yeah.
So I still have those drums. Played them on a bunch of different things. You know, they're great. They're fat, woody, beautiful tone.
And do they have that rounded edge, that
They
like
got the
baseball
rounded
edge?
edge,
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm pretty sure they're mahogany, poplar, mahogany. But like I said, I think that floor tom is maple when they started using maple. Yeah, those old drums just really have a thing, you know.
Yeah.
You know, man, they just got that. It's almost like they're EQ'd or something already, you know.
Yeah.
You know what I've been wondering recently is
What's
who's
that?
got Charlie Watts's kits.
I'm sure.
Where are they in storage? Did they go to
Sure
somebody? I wonder who's got some of those touring.
Yeah. No, I've
60s
heard that they
Gretsch
have a huge like warehouses. Just
Because he was a collector, right? Didn't he have a just
Yeah.
an enormous amount of kits?
Yeah.
I thought I
Kids
read somewhere.
and other instruments as well. Like I think he had. Have you seen the video of his instrument collection in his little museum that he had? And
I've heard about it.
he
Yeah.
had
I
a
didn't see it.
road case that was like Charlie Parker's alto case. It says Charlie Parker right on it, and he had
Like somebody's cufflinks from
Yeah.
that era, like
Benny
in the
Goodman
20s.
or like Gene Krupa's Radio King kit, you know, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a collector and had amazing stuff.
Did you ever meet Charlie at all?
I did. Man, it was amazing. There was a big band gig with space and names, but the cat who MDs the Stones was
Chuck Leavell.
Yes, and he had made this big band record, and he wanted to do some gigs in New York, and so we did a gig, and then Charlie came down and sat in, you know, and so we got to hang out. He's a really nice cat, and I got to hug him and just say, man, you have been such an influence on so much of us, and just thank you for everything you've given, and done. And it was a thrill to meet him. And
I feel like the older I get, the more I listen to those records, and the more I just realize how badass he was. He just really had such a great feel. I heard an isolated drum track from.
Does it Give Me Shelter? I just saw.
Yeah,
I
it
didn't
was.
watch it, but I
Gimme-
just saw that floating around. People were
and
sharing
to
that.
hear the way he was playing the bass drum. There was this. It was the attack was so direct, but there was this slight behind thing. It was like, but the kick right before the snare was behind where I would have put it, and I was like, damn, man, that guy he's just planting it, man. There's no moving that thing, and it was so funky and earthy. It was amazing to hear, but yeah, the more I go back to those records, the more I just realize he just had a really the band had a special thing, but he really had a special thing.
Yeah. Amen.
Yeah, you don't last that long as a band.
Well, I think
Without
they
having
worked
that-
on it too. I mean, I think I'm not an expert on it, but the stories that I've heard is that Mick and Keith were really vocal about what they wanted, and I think they did a lot of writing in the studio, so I think a lot of those songs had a real kind of path and direction to them over time. You know, they would develop, and those guys, I mean, I think Charlie worked hard as a Rolling Stone, you know. He did many, many takes, and, you know, they had ideas about how they wanted to do things. But, yeah, they sure all complimented each other.
Oh, yeah.
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 Yeah. So, what was did you both start with drums, or was there another instrument? Like, did somebody, like Luke from Noble and Cooley, started on clarinet? So we rode him a little bit about, you know, you two can survive and, you know, get out of the world of clarinet if you learn how to play. You two can be cool if you put the clarinet down and pick up a pair of drumsticks.
Yeah, we had a twisted thing because in Missouri at that time, it was still like required. You had to choose a music thing. And then the class was, you know, the class size was kind of small town. And, you know, everybody was trying to be tough guys and, oh, I'm not into music. I just want to go play football or, you know, some shit like that.
In the South, yeah.
And so, you know, you either had to you had to choose either orchestra or band. So then all the guys that are trying to be tough guys went to orchestra because you didn't have to buy the instrument. They would give you the instrument. Whereas, like, if you said band, you'd have to, you know, buy the trumpet or the little drum and stuff. So, anyways, all the guys trying to be tough, we go over to orchestra and stuff. And man, like, I started on cello of all things, but I always wanted to play drums, and I was only doing it because I was trying to be a tough guy, you know.
That's funny, man.
And so, after like a year of that, I just said, man, I can't do this, and switched over to band, you know. And then the orchestra director guy was a real stern older cat, and he said, you know, you're making a big mistake. All you want to do is go out in the middle of the football field and go boom, boom, boom on a drum, or some shit, you know. Like he had a whole meltdown about anybody leaving the little orchestral program, you know.
He wanted to have his kids in there.
Yeah. But I was glad to escape and never look back.
Yeah. We're glad too, man.
Now, what about you, Tony? Did you any other instrument first, or was it always? I mean, especially having your father play drums.
Yeah, I think I remember when we had a similar situation where we had to choose instruments. You know, at the time, that tune Baker Street was real hot, man, and I was like, yeah, man, maybe I want to play that saxophone.
That's I love it. Yeah, man. Yeah.
Or The Heat Is On.
Wow,
that was another sax.
This is way before The Heat Is On, because by the time The Heat Is On came out, I was already had been playing in bands for a while. But yeah, but the time came around, and my pretty sure like my 5th or 6th birthday, my dad had already given me a pair of sticks and a practice pad, and so when the time came, I could already play a little bit, and I could read like quarter notes and things, so I just ended up playing drums, you know.
Did he give you lessons and stuff? Like
he did in the beginning. I remember I had this sheet of paper somewhere where he wrote out right, left, and then right doubles, right, left, and then paradiddle. And I was like practicing on the bottom of a little bushel basket, you know, from my grandfather's garden. And I did that, and then I think it was around 5 or 6 years old, I got the pad. But then the first lesson that he really gave me on drum set, this is really out, but it was on that Slingerland drum kit, and for my birthday I had gotten the 45 single of I'm Your Boogeyman by Casey and the Sunshine Band, you know?
I'm your boogeyman.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Yeah.
And he was like, all right, so here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna play I'm your boogeyman. You're gonna play this on the bass drum, and then you play this on the snare drum, and then you're gonna play this on the cymbal. And so that was kind of my first drum set lesson that I remember.
And you started working right away.
I started working right away.
That's all you need to know.
That's all you need to know.
That's it. One beat.
I love it.
It's kind of true.
Well, that's that joke about bass players. They go to like take a bass lesson, a couple lessons, and then they're already working. You know, like. But
A good bass player that knows some tunes, they're usually always working.
yeah.
Well, my kid goes back and forth. My son,
Yeah.
he'll play the drums for a week. Then it's I think I want to play guitar now. I don't think the drums are my thing. Then I want to go back to drums. Then it's like I keep telling him, I'm like, if you don't want to do all those, pick up the freaking bass and get good at it. And I go, you'll be able to like not work some stupid job at McDonald's in high school. You can like be playing and making money while all your buddies are like, working the drive-through. I go, just learn how to play bass.
Yeah.
So he did that for like a week.
Well, man, talking about the stick pattern, I love that we both got to study with Alan. You know, that's amazing.
So amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
Because he was an amazing guy, wasn't he? Incredible teacher.
The Alan Dawson thing,
Yeah.
you know. Wow, yeah.
Yeah.
I love
what are
that
some
we
of your
have that.
memory. Oh, you have to tell your incredible story.
Oh, well, no, but we were talking earlier about the way he would structure his lessons, you know, and then you'd go there and that white sheet of paper that had the little snare drum and his name and the address in Lexington, Mass, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then he gave you 3 rudiments for each lesson, right?
Yep.
And if you didn't nail it,
he'd let you know immediately.
and you wouldn't go on to the next anything until you mastered it the way he wanted. So it was that, and then the stick control thing.
Stick control.
Between the snare and the bass drum and playing jazz time.
Yeah, you'd have to you'd play 4 bars at a time, and then 4 bars of the R's would be on the snare drum and the L's would be on the bass drum. 2 and 4 on the hi-hat.
And then it went to the syncopation book, right?
Yeah.
And then he had a million ways of approaching that, which I just loved, you know.
Yeah.
Like this idea of the syncopation book just being those kind of simple rhythms, but then applying any kind of concept to it, you know.
Yeah.
That was really cool.
Yeah. I mean, really mastery, a way to approach the instrument. You know?
Yeah. And then you got to jam with him. He'd play vibes.
Oh,
He'd
nice.
call a tune, you know.
Yeah.
Either a blues or rhythm changes
Or he'd make you go through a blues and the different time signatures too. Do you remember that? Did you have to do that?
I never did that with him. I never did any odd meter stuff with him.
Yeah, I guess he, you know, it would be the blues thing, and then because he had played with Dave Brubeck for a second, I guess too. You know.
There's some amazing clips of him taking solo on Take 5 with Dave Brubeck on YouTube. Wow.
So you know, it'd be him on the vibes, and he'd set up the thing, but it'd go through blues changes, and you'd accompany him, and you know, and but I loved how it was like technique, but then it ended with the music thing, like making music, you know. He had some great words of wisdom. But I remember because he's taught Tony Williams, obviously. And I was like, man, how does Tony, you know, on that live mile stuff, and how's he doing that 5 notes in a row with the ride cymbal and all this stuff? And he said, oh, I think we don't need to worry about that and just focus on some basics here. You know?
That's amazing.
And then, and then Tony's use of color, like, you know how he was just had such an amazing voice behind the drums, but like, you know, like open hi-hat type, you know, his use of color, you know, and then Alan would be like, you know, I love color on the instrument, but we never wanted to get in the way of taking care of business, you know, and then he would talk about like that art of feathering the bass drum, you know.
Yeah.
And how so many of his contemporaries that he would play with say, man, why can't these young drummers, you know, why can't they feather the bass drum like that,
true.
you know?
Yeah.
And he talked about the difference of hearing, like if you come up just hearing records and not seeing people play, like you may not notice that was going on or felt subtly, you know.
Yeah.
You just hear like the bombs being dropped or something, you know. And that whole grounded just foundation that he could communicate to someone as a student, you know, and have them grasp it. It was really amazing.
Yeah, he was really teaching you. He wasn't teaching you anything about style, really. He was teaching you how to control the instrument. You know, he was teaching you how to go about mastering the four-legged monster.
Right.
And he had a whole way in, and you could take it as far as he could go. He was really incredible to watch because he had such finesse. His hands were, you would sit directly across from him. There'd be pads in the middle. You'd be on one side, he'd be on the other, and I'll never forget watching his hands. They were so graceful. It was like watching like one of those old fan dancers, and
right.
in those like 1930s movies with there's so much grace and finesse and clarity, in his touch and his sound. Really mind-blowing. And I remember we were working on some rudiments at one point, and I don't remember exactly how it came about, but I do remember him saying, I think Elvin Jones was playing at the Regatta Bar. And so after my lesson, I was going to take my lesson with Alan and then meet a friend of mine, and we're going to go hear Elvin at the Regatta Bar in Boston. And I was all excited about it. I was telling him about Elvin Jones. He's like, and he said, well, you know who my hero is? And he pointed up to the wall, and he had this little postcard of Papa Joe Jones, up there, Joe Jones. And at the time, I didn't put two and two together. But when you watch clips of Joe Jones, because now there's so much available, and the dexterity and the precision, but there's tempo and feel in everything he does, and you could totally hear the relationship between their styles to me, and you could hear how Alan was came out of that whole thing. But yeah, he was just such a, like you said, man, like there was total nuts and bolts to his playing, but there was absolute mastery of the instrument too.
Yeah. I remember he made a funny thing, or an interesting story about Elvin. I remember telling me that he was on a bill with Elvin and maybe Roy Haynes and different, it was like a whole afternoon of different people, and he talked about, not being intimidated by other musicians or trying to stay in your own voice or being confident with what your trip was and not being thrown off your... It was just interesting, like, that analogy that he used.
That is interesting, and, I think that's something that all those guys were kind of conscious of back then, like, because you could put on a record and hear the tenor player and know in two notes, oh man, that's Gene Ammons, or that's Coltrane, that's Sonny, and same with drummers, you could, that was one of the things we used to do in school all the time is, blindfold tests, and, I got pretty good with being able to identify drummers by their cymbal beat, Kenny Clark versus like somebody like Art Blakey, or versus like Lewis Hayes, and I think all those guys kind of prided themselves on being different from each other.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that thing of having to, although Tony Williams kind of did. Tony Williams kind of absorbed everybody and then put out his own like Tony Williams sausage,
Yeah.
But there wasn't that thing of like you have to know how to do everything, you have to be able to, that's what's so incredible about somebody like Elvin. There's so much soul and feeling and emotion behind what he's doing, but is he as does he have the dexterity of somebody like Buddy Rich? No, but he certainly has the profundity in his playing,
Yeah. Man, the first time I saw Elvin was at the Blue Note, and I sat in the front row, and I was just like, I started crying. I hate that it sounds silly to admit, but because it's his sound and his approach was like what you're leaning into is such an individual voice, you know. And I remember a bit reading that like when Elvin was first maybe coming up with that, it was so kind of left and unusual that some people were like,
Fired for playing that way.
And but the fact that he stuck with his sense of vision and what he wanted to do, and man, it was just, and the range of emotion, like on his face, from like the most innocent childlike like love of music, and joy of playing, and then like some of the most evil, shit possible too. It was just wild, like the 360 of his thing, It was, man, it blew me away. Because, when you grow up listening to just somebody on record all the time and then you finally see them, because the mechanics and the drums, that was sort of before the whole YouTube era. Yep. That's another thing that was wild about before YouTube, like those collectors that had videotapes, and you'd finally see something like that, like, Art Blakey in Paris in the early 60s or something. And it was such insightful to see drummers, their physical language behind a kid and connect it to what you grew up listening to.
So important.
Yeah,
man.
Yeah.
I mean, you learned so much from watching.
Well, it's wild because you hung out with Jimmy Cobb quite a bit, you were saying, and like, just his language on the ride cymbal, more contained physically, versus like the Elvin thing.
Right, very controlled, very like close to the cymbal.
Yeah, and everybody's different voice.
Yeah, whereas Elvin was more languid, but Billy Higgins was also like that with his touch on the cymbal.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're lucky we were around and got to hear him play too, because he was around New York a lot.
Now, did you, because right down the street is the piano place that was there.
Yeah.
Terrible. I keep spacing. But on
Bradley's,
yeah. And man, I remember seeing Billy Higgins there.
Yeah.
And it was trippy. It was maybe they had a house like one of those Remo kits that was made out of pressed board or something.
He was playing Remos, man.
Okay, so maybe it was his own thing,
Yeah.
But he's still getting an incredible sound of what I could have been playing on, boxes and it wouldn't
totally.
matter, But man, his feel and that cymbal, and his energy behind the kit, the smile, man, and just
He was the first jazz drummer I ever saw at the Iron Horse in Northampton.
Oh wow!
I was in high school. I'd just gotten my first issue of Modern Drummer, and I'm flipping through, and Billy Higgins is like in there.
Yeah.
So I'm looking at something, and it's like, oh, Billy Higgins is coming to the Iron Horse. I'm like, Dad, can we please go? He goes, yeah, sure, we'll go. He goes, I don't know anything about jazz, but we got there early, got like the first table, like basically like right here, and he's playing the drums. And I remember going up to him, he's talking to somebody, and I'm like, Mr. Higgins, could you sign my Modern Drummer magazine? And he's like, after the show, kid. And I was like he just kicked me in the balls, and he could see like I must have just gone blank, and he goes, come here. He goes, let me sign that. He goes, I got time. He goes, I'm just joking with you. I don't know if he was joking or not.
Right.
But when he played, he sat there, and he could see me looking at him, and he was, looking at me.
You the message.
And then he would do the, he was like voicing all the stuff on the drums, and I was like, oh, okay. So that was the first real jazz drummer that I saw, and I was like, whoa. But to have that like connection of being that close to like somebody in a magazine when you're like 14 was like, whoa, that's all. He's in a magazine.
Yeah,
Dad, he's in this magazine.
Yeah, amazing.
But yeah, to watch him play, it was actually him, Cedar Walton.
Say no more.
Oh man, who was on sax? Is it Ralph Moore?
Maybe it was
on tenor.
Ron Jackson, maybe.
No, it was an older guy.
Oh. Harold Land.
No. I want to say it was. Is there a guy, Ralph Moore?
Clifford Jordan.
Yeah, Ralph Moore. I don't know if Clifford Jordan was still around by that point.
Yeah.
But yeah,
They had it was
Ralph
Billy
Moore.
Higgins and Cedar
Ralph
Walton was
Moore
their
played
like
back.
duo album that they did together. I think it was like
Okay.
both their names were on it,
It was
and that's what
probably-
they were touring for.
Oh, cool.
And I remember seeing that, and I was like, "Whoa, this is cool."
Yeah, man.
I had no idea what they were doing, but I'm like, "That's cool."
They had a really unique.
Yeah, because you could, as a kid, coming into jazz, it's such a, whoa, what is this? Like, how is that working? And they weren't playing out or anything, but they were, like when they would go different paths and follow each other. And I'm trying to wrap my head about like, well, where are they going now? Like, why is he doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And then understanding that he's going with the piano player or the bass player is doing something, or Billy's doing something. And then trading fours, I was like, this is awesome. Like they're all soloing at the same time.
Yeah, they're all soloing together.
He's soloing solos and this guy's solos. This is awesome. And I'm going dang, dang, da, dang, and the big band,
Right.
4 on the floor, cracking 2 and 4, and the band director's like, whatever, dude, just keep steady time, close enough.
Whatever.
At that point, it's like, we just need somebody to play a steady beat.
Yeah.
So it was,
Amazing.
But yeah, that Billy Higgins was the first one. Yeah, that was amazing.
Oh man, that's cool. Yeah.
So here's a leading question, I guess, with that. With all the guys that you've seen, like you were talking with Elvin, like getting emotional.
Yeah.
What are a couple times where you just were awestruck of either their virtuosity on the instrument or the emotion that they were coming out with? Doesn't have to be a drummer. Could be a drummer, a musician, where maybe you were side stage, you were at a concert, and you were like, wow, I've never, that hit me so hard walking away.
Well, man, getting to do these double drumming shows alongside Steve Gadd has been like a,
Is he good?
such a.
I've heard of it.
But it's been such a gift, because it's rare that as drummers that you get to play together, and but he, being around him, he's one of those people that you learn so much almost just being in his airspace, and seeing how he handles different everything and beyond his amazing playing, and the way he mixes himself behind the kit, like the level of the bass drum in relation to everything else, or like the consistency of his cross stick sound. I know that sounds crazy, but how it can be hard to get like a really clear, beautiful sound.
And consistent, the same sound every time.
Yeah, and then just how, beyond the amazing vocabulary that he has, but even when he's playing like a ballad or something, the emotional depth and just how deep the pocket is and the heart behind, like the feeling his heart, behind the thing, man, is really inspiring to see,
Like there's so much concentration behind every and feeling.
Yeah, feeling. Yeah, he really. So like one of the things we had to do is like, I don't know, some kind of ballad like "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" with some artist that was doing it, and just those like big, ballad type fills and doing those together and being like, it just be like so, inspiring to see him, or him do that shuffle where it's just a quarter note on the ride, from playing with the organ trios and stuff. And man, the shit's just grooving so hard, man, and
Has he ever thrown you off where you get out of yourself for a minute and you're like, wait a minute, I'm playing a show too?
Well, it's wild because I just so conditioned to like, if there's a crowd, just to focus in on trying to take care of business and stuff. But there have been times where I've just like, we finished something, I've just been like, damn, man, you're killing me.
Yeah.
You are killing me, And it's never necessarily about the chop thing or something. It's more about like his heart, where I just go, man, you are, with his heart, dig it.
Yeah, so, because he's played on countless recordings, but he somehow still maintains that kind of singular identity.
Yeah,
like you've done so many sessions yourself. Would you say that's a pretty hard thing to achieve?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's so fascinating. Like you'll hear him, let's say, on a Ricky Lee Jones song, or James Taylor or something, and then turn around and then here he is with wailing with Chick Corea,
Right.
And then with Michael Brecker, and then, and it's interesting because some of it was he was working so much, and the sound is recognizable, like that era in the 70s, and the dead and down toms and that kind of thing, so you can recognize his sound.
And mushy snare drum.
Yeah. Yes, and he was saying with the snare thing, he would always, use that superphonic, and then he would take another snare, and I said, "Oh man, that's wild." I said, what was it, like a deeper drum or something like that? He said, "No, it was just the same thing in case this one broke,
So he only ever played superphonics.
Well, I'm sure he probably had different rate, but it was in general, I think he took, and there's some story about Rick Marotta in that era too, like maybe with the Peg song. Mm-hmm. And showing, because the house drum kit thing in the studios here in town, it's always a dice roll what you're going to roll into, if you're using the house kits. And So I think the toms were blown out, like all pitted and stuff. And so he showed up for that track, and then there's no toms because they were just sort of all.
So he never played the toms
So on that one
they're
track.
all pitted.
Yeah, and then that
Man,
So,
it became the
but that's such a New York kind of story. It seems like where people have to roll in, well, especially back then, I guess. And there were the house kits and stuff. Yeah. But that era of those cats that were just doing it all the time, and nonstop.
They were in the studio constantly, and then they were playing gigs at night.
Yeah, right.
That's what kills me with like Vinny Colaiuta. I mean, you could put that man in any situation, and he just kills it.
Yeah.
Like he's been doing it his whole life.
Yeah, he's special.
I mean, it's like he's doing this, he's doing Sting, and then he's doing this, and then he's doing Megadeth or whatever. Like it's like how
completely at one with the instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you could call him up for any gig, and he could go in there, and you would have no idea that this guy walked in as reading charts.
Yeah.
I feel like Steve Gadd is the same way. You could throw him in any situation, and he would kill it.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that Asia thing was a one take, right? Or the first take or something like that, they say?
One, maybe two. Maybe.
Yeah.
And maybe he did two, but they took the first one.
Now, what about you, Tony? What's just blown your mind where you were standing there going, that just happened right now?
I mean, there have been so many.
Does anything stick out? Or what was the first one? Maybe when you were younger and you saw one of the older cats where you're like, whoa, that you can take it to that level. Like, that's real.
Well, just thinking back on musicians that we've heard that have just completely blown us away.
Yeah, like you were at a concert, or like for me, I don't want to say the first time that I was blown away, but I remember being at Heart and Eric McPherson came back with Jimmy Green.
Oh, yeah.
And it was during whatever the Wednesday night rep building or whatever. And they came in and they played Giant Steps.
Yeah.
Or they played Countdown, I think.
Yeah.
And just watching the interplay between them and what Eric could do on the drums.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
And it was like they played probably 10 minutes on the song. Right. And they stopped, and Steve Davis is in the corner laughing hysterically. He's like, I've never seen 10 drummers with their tongues hanging out like I remember saying, I've never seen anybody do shit like that before. I'm like, I don't even know, I don't know that I should continue doing my career as jazz drumming because I was like that. What did he just do? Just the shit with his left foot on his hi-hat, using it as another sound. I'm just thinking, I'm either playing 4 like Tony Williams or 2 and 4, and maybe throwing a splash or something. But it was a complete different color with complete fluidity in his playing that I was like, holy shit.
Such a wonderful player, he came up in the music.
Yeah.
When I was 11, I played in my first band, but we were playing Neil Young and Leonard Skinner songs.
Yeah.
And he's a New York kid that came up
seeing
music,
it.
You know, and so I remember hearing Eric and being really, really blown away when he came up to Hartford, for sure. But you did just kind of remind me of, if we're talking about people that made us want to quit playing, there was one time at Sweet Basil's in the mid-90s, I went there with some friends to hear Mark, the sax player, Mark Turner.
Mm-hmm.
And he was playing with a quartet. It was Mark, Joe Martin on bass, George Colligan on piano, and Brian Blade on drums. And Brian was, I guess we're right about the same age, so he probably would have been late 20s at that point. And after that gig, I think I quit drinking the first time. And I came really close to quitting playing.
Packing it in.
I just, wow, man. He was just, there was such a deep level of expression there, that I just thought, man, this is like really what jazz is. Somebody with a very personally realized sound at such a young age,
He's such a great musician, man.
Yeah.
He's a wonderful musician.
Beyond just the drums, like just
Yeah.
as a musician. You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which one's in Boston at the DoubleTree? Is that Scullers or is that the Regatta Bar?
I think that was Regatta Bar.
So I saw him at, it must have been Scullers because it wasn't there. And it was like the first, I think the Fellowship album had come out, I think the first one. And I went to go see him play. And Nat was like, hey, if you see him, tell him I said hi.
Right.
So I see him go like in the green room or whatever. And I'm with my buddy who's a bass player. I go, hey, I'm going to go name drop. So we walk in and people are looking at us like, who are these kids? So I'm like, Mr. Blade, Nat Reeves says hello. He goes, oh man, come in here. I'm like, yes. So, I was talking to him and, he's like, asking me, he's asking me, oh, what do you go to Hartford? Nat's one of your teachers. That's awesome, man. Like, and like same thing. He would see me looking at him and he would connect and to see, the fluidity on drums and the way that he plays. And it's not orthodox when you watch him play. It's a very weird movement sometimes in the way he's hitting cymbals and the sound, the tones he's getting out of the drums. That was one of the ones where I was like, whoa, this is another level of what I'm used to hearing on stuff.
Yeah, I felt hearing him like a similar thing to what Shawn was talking about with Steve Gadd, where it's like there was so much emotion and feeling behind everything, that. And sometimes you hear a guy, or you hear a person playing, and they're putting forth emotion, but it almost seems like it's not that it's not real, because who's to really judge, but maybe the message just isn't getting across. But then there are those that send the message very clearly, and that was one of those nights for sure for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right, so before we get into the Levon talk, what's a story from either live, on the road, that's, I guess, somewhat PG, lower R-rated, that like you were on the road and either like a surreal moment of like you're on stage and you're like, man, did that just happen? Whether it's playing with Steve Gadd and finishing a song like maybe a Steely Dan tune that you guys play together, or just maybe something on Saturday Night Live where you were just like, man, did Chris Farley really just do that behind the camera? Or
you've got to have a million.
Oh man,
stories, bro.
No, it's so wild with it because the SNL thing, it's it's really live television, so there's shit can go left.
Yeah.
And when I first started back in '92, Sinead O'Connor was that time when Sinead O'Connor was on, and so and the setup to the story is such a trip because there's like a run-through show, and then it really goes live on air at 11:30, And so this run-through show, every artist on there usually does 2 songs. And so she does a thing with the band, and then the second song is this like kind of really dramatic thing because she's a cappella, and it's just her with some candles, and there's like sort of some flags, like Jamaican flags or something behind her, and it was this whole statement about Amnesty International, or like free the children behind bars, and she holds up a photo of a little child with bars and stuff. And so it was like this incredible cause, and really poignant, and just her voice and the kind of spooky vibe,
And didn't you do Redemption Song? Was that the song she did? I think it was Redemption Song.
I bet you're right, yeah. And maybe that's why there was the...
Yeah.
So then, like, we're on air, and so it's the second song, so it's close to 1 a.m., and there's still some comedy that's supposed to happen after the second song. And so, she does this thing, and then, man, at the end of it, she pulls up a picture of the Pope. Everybody knows the story, but like the thing in her eyes was so intense, and then, fight the real enemy. And the crowd is like, just somebody had just punched the whole crowd. The crowd goes, oh, or something, And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy. I was out in the hallway looking at a monitor, but you could hear the crowd react and stuff. And then I think Lauren, the producer, was pretty upset because there wasn't really a chance for comedy to happen after, cats wing it out, But, man, there's been a lot of stuff. Like, I think, I don't know if Aerosmith, something happened with the bass went out right before they were supposed to go on air. And then that crazy thing with Ashley Simpson.
Oh, yeah.
That was kind of wild. And I felt bad because it was the drummer I think he had like a track rig that they were playing to some tracks, but still playing. And and maybe they had their promotional set like in a Pro Tools, set like from beginning, like a 30 or 40 minute set.
Okay.
And he would, they do 2 songs, so he had triggered the first song and queued that up. But then when they went back to do the second song, he forgot to like move the marker or I don't know, something like that. So then, accidentally hitting that, because if you're young and like nervous and, it's easy mistake to happen, So I think I remember Beyonce being on there once, but with Destiny's Child before she broke away,
yeah.
And something happened with the band, and man, she was pissed. Then she, like got really dark towards the band. I remember seeing something like that once, and
what about Pavo, man?
yeah, Pavo, right?
Tell the Pavo story.
Pavarotti was there with Vanessa Williams, and it was a Christmas show, and there was kind of like a little choir and an orchestra and stuff. And so Vanessa Williams and Pavo, and then there was a female director at the time, and that was a big issue for Pavo, taking like any kind of direction from a woman, or something. And he was really insisting that the cameras only get a profile from one side, and then like the camera shoot there, I think it's called a 3-camera shoot. Like they have 3 cameras that they can cut to all the time, and he would be really uptight that there was a camera on his band side or something like that, And so he was kind of pissy up there, yeah. So.
Well, what about the duets concert though, man?
Oh yeah, so that was a trip. So he would do that thing in Italy, with all the famous stars, and
Right.
And there was this children's choir there that like, it's so funny about, different cultures, how they handle children.
Oh yeah.
And so in Italy, there was this really stern female choir director. And the kids, though, are like, 5 to 8, or like, it was always the thing of, like, Save the Children of Kosovo, or, Guatemalan refugees, or, each year had a different theme. And these kids, and it's really hot, it's in Italy, and the rehearsals are in the day. And they're like having to stand there all day, and they're all fidgety and shit. And man, this lady would come up and just, clock these kids to get them to settle down and shit. And I was like, wow, this wouldn't be allowed in the States,
In the States.
But Pablo did that thing with James Brown. And that was the classic one, And man, I guess people love it. There's tons of views. But I remember when it was going down, I was like, wow, this is so trippy. It's a man's world,
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
it's a man's world, So James Brown would do his thing, and then Pablo did it kind of in this Italian orchestral way, like oh, or some shit. And then it's a man's world, and oh, it was so out, man. Yeah.
Godfather and Pavo, man.
Yeah, and Pablo had a little conductor that was like hiding, that would always cue Pablo in to come in, and then B.B. King did it one year, and he had a little conductor that would cue B.B. about when to come in on the different stuff. So that's that was some wild times with that.
Now, what about you? Anything that you were